In today's video, why you should prioritize cardio or aerobic activity over resistance training if your goal is to lose body fat. Hey guys, what's going on? Today's question I got from the Facebook group for our transformation challenge. The 90-day challenge is kicked off, and so we're really trying to provide support in there, and I've been getting some great questions. Now, the idea of losing body fat, resistance training, aerobic activity, our diet as methods to get there for a long time have been debated, but I found some really cool research that I want to share with you guys, and I'll actually explain a little bit of my experience as well when it comes to weight loss. And the research is pretty clear, okay? And it's something that I've come to realize as well, is that activity in the form of aerobic activity, cardio, is more important for fat loss than resistance training. Now, I've made this video a few different ways, but I want to ask the question as it was asked so I can address it for you. When trying to lose body fat and maintain muscle, should you prioritize weight training or low-intensity steady-state movement while in a caloric deficit? Okay, so the idea here is that you're on a bodybuilding channel. Guys, I got trophies back there. I'm a bodybuilder. I love putting on muscle. I've been trying to do it for 30 years. However, the evidence shows that putting on muscle, while it requires a lot of effort, maintaining muscle requires very little effort comparatively. And I'll explain that through research and through my own experiences. However, fat loss requires creating a caloric deficit. Now, if time constraints are an issue, what's more important, resistance training or cardiovascular activity? A lot of people will say, well, you should focus on your resistance training because over time you're going to add more muscle. That's going to allow you to burn more calories, but that's not the point here. The point of the question was, if you're trying to lose body fat and maintain muscle, what is better? And it's pretty clear. So let me show you this first study where they took 3 groups. They had one group that just did resistance training, one group that just did resistance training and aerobic activity, and one group that just did aerobic activity. Now, in this situation, you would probably think that the group that did the resistance training and the aerobic activity lost more fat mass. Well, while the time commitment was nearly double of the group that just did aerobic activity, they did not lose significantly more fat. So it's very clear to me, based on this study, which I'll put down below in a link, that it's more important that we focus around our activity. And similarly, what I have noticed, especially as I've become more sedentary in my life, is that it requires me getting up and moving more. I've done walking videos where I've explained to you guys how I've just used walking to lose body fat, and it doesn't always make sense. People will say, well,
Paul, you're only doing a 1-hour walk every day. How are you able to lose so much weight in such a short amount of time?
I think there's a lot that's misunderstood about the dynamic relationship between cardiovascular activity and our bodies. Our bodies prefer to move more. And when we move more, likewise, some other things happen. I noticed reduced hunger, which doesn't necessarily make sense. However, when you're doing high intensity cardio and resistance training, what happens? Well, your hunger increases. So by decreasing your frequency or your amount of time spent resistance training, you might actually decrease your hunger. So let's talk about this other study that I want to show you guys. That talks about how much frequency it takes to maintain your muscle. Building muscle is very challenging. It requires that we are very consistent with our nutrition, our protein intake, and we have to progressively add more training volume and training intensities to our bodies. This is a very slow, grindy process. However, the good news here is that maintaining the muscle that you built, it's very, very easy. In fact, this study right here that I'm showing you guys showed that in younger populations, as much as 1 set done to intensity per week can maintain performance and muscle size. This is great news. Great news for people that want to focus a little bit on fat loss, but don't want to lose the muscle. This means that you could technically do an upper body day and a lower body day. That's right, just train 2 days per week, perhaps even 1 day per week, however you want to break it up, and maintain the muscle as long as you're hitting each muscle group with some intensity. Now, it does suggest that in older populations, you might want to hit that body part twice per week, but we're still talking about 2 to 3 sets per week. We're talking, it says in the research, 22 to 30 minutes per week to train, to maintain muscle. Therefore, what we're going to find is that you can reduce your time spent, focus on adding muscle, maintain the muscle where it's at, use that time more wisely through aerobic activity, my favorite, is the incline treadmill. Now, before you balk at me and say,
Paul, I don't believe walking can help you lose body fat.
you haven't walked the way that I walk. Walking is not one thing, right? And this research where they showed that aerobic activity was better, they actually gradually increased the intensity of the exercise. That means if you start off and you're very sedentary and you just go for a walk outside, great. When you adapt to that, you're going to need to either increase the time or the intensity. The easiest way for me to do that is using my treadmill. I can increase the incline, I can increase the speed. That allows me to control those variables. If you're walking outside, perhaps you can find a trail or a path that has some incline to it. If you guys have ever gone for a hike and walked up a hill, you know how challenging that can be. I try to recreate that with my cardio machines, either at the gym or at the house, okay? Now, if you're going through a phase where the number one priority is fat loss and your time is not on your side, meaning you've got a schedule that doesn't allow you to be in the gym doing resistance training and in the gym doing cardiovascular activity, aerobic activity, well, it seems pretty clear to me that this is the best path, okay? Losing that body fat. The other good news for us is that once that body fat is off, maintaining low body fat becomes much easier. We can decrease the amount of time we spend focused on aerobic activity and increase the time we spend on adding muscle or resistance training, okay? These modalities can be very beneficial to fluctuate depending on your schedule. I know we'd all like to imagine that we have as much time as we want, but who are we kidding, right? We all know that there are other priorities that take precedence from time to time in our life, whether it's just going through college and you've got some classes and you've got some stress, whether it's starting a family, whether it's moving, whether it's a new job, whatever phase of life you're going through, there may become periods of time where you have to prioritize things. And if your number one goal is to lose body fat and you're happy with where your muscle is at, you will not be at risk for losing muscle as long as you keep a few light training sessions in per week, a little bit of intensity, as low as one full intensity set per week on those body parts, and you're going to notice that you do not lose muscle. Now, I'm going to explain it from my point of view. I began lifting weights in 1989. And for the better part of that time, I've always tried to get one more rep. I've tried to get stronger, add a little bit of muscle. I've had some success. I've gotten strong. I've done some things in my life that I think are pretty cool, like bench press 400 pounds with a pause. I've won some bodybuilding competitions. I've deadlifted well over 500 pounds. Some of these things required an immense amount of time. And what I've noticed during that time is that when I have periods where I'm able to train with less frequency, I don't see a huge decline in my strength or my performance. Likewise, when I go back to training with a little bit more frequency, I notice that my muscle comes back really quickly. And so it's been a fun journey to notice this, and it's really cool to see that the research backs this up. I think sometimes mentally we can feel like a failure if we're not able to keep up with our training 5 to 6 days a week, right? If we're not able to keep up with our perfect diet. But just seeing that through some activity, it's much better than no activity. And if your primary goal is fat loss, I think you should focus much more time on your activity levels. When I look back at my life, the easiest I was ever the leanest was when I moved the most. I look back at like high school. Before I was driving everywhere, I was walking, I was riding my bike, I was walking to class. Those times I used to think of as like I had this great metabolism. Turns out our metabolism doesn't change, perhaps not even until our 70s or 80s. Research shows that what changes is us. We get more responsibilities, we have more freedom. Honestly, sometimes technology, things like cars, things like gaining some financial freedom, I don't have to move as much. I'm in my office right now where I live. I literally walk down the stairs to see my kids and I come up here to work. I could be as sedentary as I want to be. I have to create that movement for myself throughout the day, which is why I purchased a treadmill. So I suggest instead of focusing on what's not working, you focus on moving more. This has been a great realization in my life at 48 years old. I find it's never been easier to maintain a very muscular physique. I'll show you some pictures and videos here of me very recently of being able to kind of eat freely while paying attention to what I'm eating. I don't have to track every day. I can just be consistent, hit it in the gym a couple days a week, and of course, keeping up with my daily steps and activity. And so this has been something that I really want to impart on you guys. I think it goes against the grain. I know a lot of times we can think that resistance training is this magical thing, but in my history, I've noticed that when I focused on resistance training, removed cardio, my hunger was sky high. I put on a lot of body fat thinking I needed more calories and ended up having to take that body fat off to get back to the look that I preferred. Now, I make sure daily steps, daily activity, cardio or aerobic activity is a part of my daily routine. And staying lean, staying muscular has never been easier. Okay, guys, hopefully this answers your question. If you have any questions for me and you're not in the Facebook group for the Transformation Challenge, go right here to my Instagram direct message. If I don't reply to you directly, and I think it's a good question, I'll put it right here on the channel. Hopefully this helps you guys. Hope you're having a great start to your week, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.